Welcome to the Burn Your Mortgage Podcast, a Canadian real estate podcast that shows you how to pay off your mortgage sooner and live well while doing it. Now, here's your host, Sean Cooper.
Welcome to the Burn Your Mortgage Podcast. I'm Sean Cooper, and it's great to be back for another episode. On today's show, I'll be talking to Sarah Larbi. Sarah specializes in helping take the mystery out of home ownership for Canadians who thought real estate investing was going to be out of reach. She's earned their trust and respect by having the drive and focus to embark, build, and grow a seven-figure 10-property, 14-door investment portfolio by her mid-30s, all whilst employed full-time. She's now able to exit the job world as of fall 2020, only 7 years after buying her first investment property. Sarah is an invited back speaker and panelist with the Investor Forum, and her expertise and insight are a sought-after subject at professional networking groups, and as co-founder, she also hosts regular investor learning sessions for experienced and newer investors through the success of the Right Club. In my interview with Sarah, we discuss how she was able to retire from her 9-to-5 job 30 years early, the importance of key power team members, and how advanceable mortgages can help you grow your real estate portfolio. Without further ado, here's my interview with Sarah Larbi. Hey Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. It's great to have you back on the podcast. Last time we spoke, you were working full-time at a 9-to-5 job. What has changed since then?
Yeah, so last time I was on your podcast, I was still working full-time, 50, 60-hour weeks. And since then, I've made the decision over the summer to leave the corporate world, leave the job world, and quote unquote, retire. At least, I'm still going to be doing real estate, but retire from the job. And it's really cool to be able to utilize the time in the summer that we had and just reflect back on, what I needed to do it. And I realized I was actually able to retire from the corporate job, and I didn't need my full-time income anymore, which is pretty cool. Real estate replaced it. All in all, I guess I've got the freedom that I've been wanting to get for so long.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm just curious, did the current COVID situation play into it at all? And was that always the end game with you, being able to retire early, investing in real estate? Was that always what you had in mind as early as you're retiring?
Yeah, I always wanted to retire early. I didn't want to work 35 or 30 years just to retire when I'm much older. And I still wanted to enjoy the health benefits of still being young and being able to have that freedom and to travel and do different things. COVID actually, in a weird way, it forced me to slow down because I was going like 200 miles an hour with my full-time job and everything else I was doing when it came to real estate. And in a way, yes, it was a shock, but COVID allowed me to actually spend more time at the cottage and just doing more reflecting and just realizing that from a financial standpoint, I actually was where I wanted to be and I was able to take that leap. So this was back in June. I left, permanently October 1st, but I definitely wanted to make sure I didn't burn any bridges, and the company has been amazing. My team was amazing. So, I gave them a good 3 months heads up. So it was a transition, definitely, but it feels great. It's been the first full month right now of being able to be in charge of my own calendar, my own everything I want to do. I mean, despite the fact that we can't travel, it's been an incredible month so far, and I can't wait for the rest.
Well, that really sounds amazing, and I'm sure it'll be even more amazing once we can travel again, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I'm sure the listeners are wondering how you were able to actually achieve it. Can you explain to the listeners, how did you manage to retire from your job 30 years early? Obviously, real estate played an important role in it, but perhaps you could go a bit more into the nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah, sure. About 10 years ago, I went to the bank with my boyfriend, Matt, at the time, and we realized that we had been working for a few years and had no assets. And we didn't really know what an asset or liability was when we met with our financial advisor. And that day, literally, this became my my passion is how to create wealth and how to retire early. And I literally just went home and Googled it. It took a couple years. I narrowed it down to investing in real estate. And in October 2013, we bought our first rental property, rented it out. Fast forward to today, we've got 14 doors. 6 of those are short term, the rest are long term rentals. But what really made it happen faster was the BRRRR strategy. When you buy a property, you renovate it, you rent it out, you refinance to pull the money out, and then you take that money to go to the next one. So that's really helped us catapult that faster and forward to get to our goals. It took 7 years, but it's 7 years of dedication and just continuing and moving forward and ensuring that our goals are in mind and in check. And here we are today.
Wow, that's really impressive. And it just goes to show it's all about one property at a time. I'm not sure whether you had that number of doors in mind when you first started investing in real estate, but I guess have one door and then you just keep adding and adding. And then before you know it, you're at 14 doors, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm still able to buy now. It's just going to be different, right? So I'm still continuing. Like, just because I'm retired from my full-time job, it just doesn't mean that I want to be stagnant and twirl my thumbs all day. So like, I'm still going to be buying real estate. It's just going to now be, if I'm doing it by myself, because I don't have a T4 income anymore, and we probably don't qualify for much more residential, they're likely going to be commercial residential units. So like 5 or more units, or something with a storefront or an office space, and then maybe some like a mixed use residential on top. So something like that, and we could still keep going that way. And then I'm going to be also doing some joint ventures. I've had a lot of people inquiring about it, just didn't have the time before to go out there and scale to the same extent. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But ultimately, I'm also looking forward to having time off and days off and being able to travel more once things open up, and really being in charge of my own schedule. Like, if I want to be going out a random Wednesday in the middle of the day, I can, right? That's the freedom that you can create.
Oh, that really sounds amazing. And that's a perfect segue to my next question. Set yourself some goals, but it's important to have the right people around you to help make things happen. So talk about the importance of what you like to call your key power team members and how others can make it happen like you.
Yeah, absolutely. There is nobody that's a successful real estate investor that has done it all by themselves, right? Otherwise, it's an uphill battle. So building your team is so important. So you're going to want to have your core team, and then you're going to want to have a local team. So your core team, so let's just say you want to invest in Ontario, right? So your core team will be your mortgage broker, not going to the bank, because that's one of the mistakes I made in the beginning, but your mortgage broker, a good one that's working with other investors and ideally is an investor themselves. My mortgage broker really helped me be able to scale by ensuring that I'm qualifying for the correct lenders at the right time, not to hit that financing wall. And then in addition to that, you're going to want to have a good real estate accountant, a good real estate investing lawyer. So that's going to be your core team, and a coach. If you want a coach or mentor to help speed things forward, learn from their mistakes, goes much faster. And then you'll have your local team. So your local real estate investor, realtor, right? So you want them to be investors themselves, because they'll know what the numbers look like, and they're going to be able to help you as well along the way. So definitely a good local realtor. Your contractors that understand the strategy that you're doing. So if you're doing the BRRRR strategy, which is a mix of flipping and holding, you're going to want to ensure that these contractors understand how to renovate to get the maximum after repair value and the maximum rent without over renovating. That's an important piece as well. You're going to have your inspector in your core team. Just go back. You can have an insurance broker as well. That's always a great person to add to the team to help you propel yourself forward. And there's a handful of other people that you might have, but like those are probably the main ones that you're going to want to have to get started. And the easiest way to do that is pick your mortgage broker or pick your realtor and ask for who they utilize for their team. A local realtor, if you're interested in a specific area, they're investors themselves, they'll likely have their whole team set up. So lean on them, find a good one. You can lean on them for a lot of those team members and the trades, right? An electrician, a plumber, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just curious, have you done any of the renovations on the properties yourself, or do you basically outsource that all to experts to take care of?
If I actually did the renos myself, the houses would lose value. But no, you know what? I will say that I delegate everything that I can that I either don't know how to do, don't enjoy doing, or is just not worth my time. So I can work in, like, not in the business, but I can work on the business. We've done it two ways. We've done it where I was essentially the contractor managing trades. You hire a person for the kitchen, you hire like a flooring person, you can hire a painter, like, and you're coordinating the trades. And I've done it, where you're hiring the contractor yourself and the contractor is essentially babysitting and managing the trades. So one costs more than the other. Obviously, hiring a contractor costs more than being the contractor yourself. You'll likely save anywhere between 20 to maybe 50%, give or take. And then I've done it where I was at the cottage for 3 months and I just wanted to hire contractors to manage all of that stuff because I just didn't want to necessarily deal with the day-to-day stuff. Yes, it costs more money, but it was the right one and it'll give you peace of mind and things get done.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And could you talk about advanceable mortgages and how they can help you grow your real estate portfolio?
Yeah, here's the thing, and I'll take a step back first. When it comes to financing, it's important that you work with the lenders that are going to have the most flexibility to start, right? So for example, like I like the lenders that are going to give me 20% as a down payment and a 30-year amortization, and the rates are fairly good. Okay, usually those are like A lenders, like big banks. In addition, I like the ones that allow for a refinance to be done in 3 months or 6 months, because some lenders don't want to do a refinance until after 12 months. So if my strategy is to take a property, renovate it quickly, put the tenant in, get the refinance, I want to be able to have that flexibility to go back and get a new appraisal done with a new house value that's gone up and be able to recycle my money. So I do like the ones that allow for a shorter timeline to refinance. The other piece of it is there are some lenders that will do advanceable mortgages, which is essentially you put in $1, you're paying your mortgage each month, or your tenants in this case are going to pay your mortgage each month. Half goes to principal, half goes to interest. The principal portion, if you are working and you've got a loan that's an advanceable mortgage, what's going to happen is, let's just say your payments are $1,000, 500 is in principal pay down. That opens up a line of credit on your advanceable mortgage for that same amount that you can utilize down the road. So that is a great tool. You still have more flexibility. You don't have to go and requalify for those as well. If you don't want to, they're just going to essentially grow a HELOC or a home equity line of credit automatically as you pay down your principal.
No, that sounds like a great strategy and a good way to have the equity in your property working for you rather than having to save the money, because I'm sure if you had to keep saving the 20% down from personal savings to buy each property, that would probably take a lot longer than the strategy you mentioned.
Yeah.
Great. Well, since this is the Burn Your Mortgage podcast, what tips can you offer for burning down mortgages yourself?
Yeah, there's a few things you can do. First and foremost, if you don't need all the cash flow, you can reuse it into the business. Your tenants essentially with investment properties are paying the mortgages down as long as they cash flow. I do like the accelerated biweekly payments, so you can get your 30-year amortization down to 26. But I don't necessarily like want my payments to be on a 15-year AM or anything along those lines. Here's what I do and here's what I suggest. When you're a real estate investor, you're going to have your nest egg strategy, and then you're going to have your accelerator strategy. Your nest egg properties, for example, are going to be the ones that you're going to keep for a really long time. Okay. These are going to be the ones that at some point they will be paid down. And what you're going to do is you're going to utilize your fast track strategy or your accelerator strategy. And you're going to at some point sell those properties that you have that you're not keeping forever in your accelerator strategy to pay off your nest egg properties, right? So let's just say you accumulate 10 nest egg properties that you BRRRR, right? You've renovated them. They have a tenant in there. Your tenants are paying down your mortgage. And once you've got those 10, maybe you decide to buy a few more that you're going to keep for like 5 years or 7 years, or maybe some of those 10 you've decided that you want to sell some off. So what you're then going to do is you're going to take the proceeds or the profits, and then you're going to pay down your mortgages with those, so that at some point your 10 nest egg properties are generating about 70% is going to be the cash flow of what the rent's going to be. So let's just say your rent is 2,000, 70% of that is likely what's going to come into your pocket, because there's still insurance, there's still maintenance, things that will happen. So you still have to factor a few things. Obviously, there's still taxes, even if your mortgages are paid down. To me, that's the strategy that I apply versus just trying to pay off each one by adding large chunks. So I have them set into two different categories.
Great. I'm just curious, is your plan to eventually have all the mortgages paid off on the properties, or do you plan to just keep using mortgage financing to keep, like, do you have a limit to how many doors you want? Are you happy with 14 doors, or do you want 50 or 100 doors one day?
I mean, when I looked at what I had, I was happy with the income that it was bringing me. I don't necessarily need 200. I don't need 100. But what I will, so my personal strategy, what I'm going to be doing moving forward is I'm going to be looking at some like larger multifamily. I'm going to be looking at some joint venture deals that will have a shorter time frame. And then I'm going to keep those 14 that I currently have, those 14 doors. And I'm going to work out a JV agreement that says in 5 years or 7 years, if we both agree to sell, that property gets sold and profits get split. And then that chunk of money will be paid down on the properties. So that's kind of how I have it set up, but it doesn't mean that everyone's going to do it the same way, right? Personally, for me, I don't mind having 10 mortgages because I know that they're being covered and they still cash flow, and I'm strategic about it. The tenants, I would say, part of where I think I've been able to be successful and scale the portfolio is every property that we bought, the rent is still covering all of the expenses, and then it's giving us some net income at the end of the day. Versus maybe a speculator that might just buy an $800,000 condo and rent it out and lose 400 or have to pay an extra 400 or 500 out of pocket for somebody to actually live there because they're not able to cover all the costs of the mortgage and the taxes and everything else.
Great. Thanks very much for explaining that. And I'm just curious, how has it been having tenants during COVID-19? Have you had any issues with anyone paying the rent who has been affected by COVID in terms of their income? And have you had to actually show a property during COVID-19? I would think since nowadays it's a lot more difficult to evict tenants. I don't even know if that's possible right now because the court systems are kind of all, if they're open, they're probably really backlogged. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of hear your experience with tenants during these days and what advice you would have for somebody who is showing a property to tenants. I mean, obviously, I would think that you would want to screen even more carefully these days since it's not so easy to evict a tenant if you have to do that. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Sarah.
Yeah, sure. So I'll preface by saying I'm in Ontario. So every province will have, different regulations. In Ontario, it is definitely, like you said, favoring the tenants. And the board is backed up that if you have a tenant that doesn't pay, like it could take up to a year to get the eviction completed. I will say that like screening your tenants is vital. And we've been lucky because what we've found is that, we're buying these properties, we're renovating the properties, and so that we're able to then set up our own tenants that we want, right? So there is a 5-step screening process that's very thorough that I've built over time just through, my experiences. And I do have that available on my website as well. So with screening your tenants in a province where you know that it's very tenant friendly, and if you get the wrong ones in there, you don't have a whole lot of control, that is going to be so critical. And then to answer your second question, all my tenants have been fine during COVID. I think one needed another couple days, one of the months to pay. But again, like everyone's caught up and everyone has paid on time. And the other thing too, I would say is I buy in markets where, let's just say that $2,000 CERB per person actually helps, right? Versus somebody in Toronto that's renting for $3,000 or something in a major city. And a $2,000 CERB payment probably doesn't take you very far. You don't have a whole lot left for food. So the properties that I buy are not $700,000 or $800,000 or $900,000 properties for the most part. They're likely $3-ish $100,000 properties, give or take. The rents are still manageable. So the other thing is obviously, your tenants are clients, so we treat them well, and we have respect for them, and in return they do too. And to answer your other question, I did have one unit become vacant, a couple that broke up, it became vacant, and we filled it. But to be honest, like I've spent, the first, I don't know, from let's just call it March to April-ish, all the way to July. I was at the cottage and we had it filled in May, and I didn't really want to go back for it. So I just actually hired my my real estate's investor realtor. So my realtor out there found somebody, and she has taken my tenant screening course as well, and she knows exactly what I look for. So she was able to help place somebody there. Great tenant. She works with the city actually, and just a single lady, and I think she's got a couple cats, but everything's good. But just you do a very good job at your due diligence on screening tenants. I will say it's not always possible if you inherit tenants at that point in time, right? So like if I'm going to be buying a 5-unit building, chances are like the majority, if not all, of those units are already going to have tenants in there. So you don't always know what you're getting. And sometimes you've got to find some ways to do cash for keys or just different things if those tenants don't work out, if you don't want to be waiting for that whole year for the board to give you that eviction.
Great. And just curious, cash for keys, could you just briefly explain what that means exactly?
Yeah. So it's just, in a way, it makes me angry. But because the process is so slow in Ontario, and some tenants may not even want to cooperate and they may drag their feet, sometimes it might be easier to just offer exactly what it says, right? Cash for the keys. So if a tenant is willing to move out, maybe you give them first and last, or maybe you give them a few thousand, whatever it is, for them to say, okay, yep, I'm fine, I'll leave, and it is what it is, move on. Obviously you don't give them the cash until they're like completely out and like literally all their stuff is out. But it is something that landlords have been utilizing in order to get people out faster. And it's also an issue because some tenants are realizing that and trying to ask for some like astronomical amounts so that they don't drag their feet through the whole process.
Okay, good to know. So remember, don't give the cash first. Wait until they're out of the property.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, Sarah, it's been great having you on the show. Before I let you go, is there anything of interest that you're working on that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
TheRightClub.com is a whole online community of real estate investing across Canada. It's free to join. TheRightClub.com. It's REITE club.com. And then they can go to my website as well. Like I'm always working on different things. I am always looking for some off-market opportunities. I am considering some joint venture partnerships as well. They can go in and take a look at sarahlarbi.com. I am also launching a BRRRR Freedom community. So, the whole process that I've done to create my freedom, we're going to have 2 calls a month. It's going to be affordable. It's going to be a larger group. But there's that coming out as well in December, which I'm excited about.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Burn Your Mortgage podcast. Besides being a podcast host, I'm also an independent mortgage broker. If you or anyone you know, family, friends, coworkers, or neighbors could ever use any unbiased mortgage advice or a second opinion, feel free to reach out. Email me at Sean, that's SEAN, at burnyourmortgage.ca, or call or text me at 647-867-3711 for a free mortgage consultation. Also, be sure to head on over to www.burnyourmortgage.ca and sign up for my free weekly newsletter. As a small token of my appreciation, you'll be able to download my ultimate mortgage checklist on choosing the perfect mortgage. I look forward to hearing from you and helping you with all your mortgage needs. Once again, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Mortgage podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating. Until next time, happy mortgage burning.